raised in Iran, and I spent the first 18 years of my life there. And, as I was growing up, the situation just kept getting worse and worse. The economy was getting worse. And my parents, they had a daughter and they knew that this country is not a place to raise a girl. And they did all they could. We had attorneys in the US. We tried our best. So we finally were able to obtain a immigration status and move to the United States. And that was something I believe was, God's will.
Yes.
And so we decided to move here finally. I mean, the situation just was not stable, and it was difficult because you have family, you have loved ones, you have a house, you have a job,
Right.
friends, and everything you care about, and you have to leave everything behind, pack your bags, and come to a country where you don't know anything about, you don't have any family or friends, you don't speak the language. And that is a very difficult transition. And we did all of that so we could have basic human rights.
You know, I'm sitting here thinking, and I can only imagine. I know that you're with the Dissonant Project and you're with Young Voices, and you are studying law at George Washington University, one of my favorite schools in the nation. I did some of my undergrad there when it was an all-girls school at Mount Vernon Women's College. So I have a lot of respect for what you have done. Are you going to write a book about basically escaping the Ayatollah of Iran? Because I listened to some of your interviews this morning, and I've been watching some of the work that you've been doing. You talk a lot about a comparison to finding freedom and what you escaped from. But so I'm going to ask you this. Are you writing a book about this? Are you going to be publishing something that will be guiding the next generation, the young woman, about what is happening and what they need to be aware of?
Dissident Project has given me amazing tools to be able to share my story with
Yeah.
young people.
Yeah.
Every time I speak to a group of students at universities and other places, or even I've spoken to book clubs and
Yes.
just anyone who's been interested in hearing about it. And, many individuals have told me that this is not what they imagined it would look like. First of all, a lot of people who are older generation remember how Iran used to be before 79. It was
Yes.
a free country,
Yes.
and people had freedom. But a few years later, women would be beaten up if they are showing their hair, and men and women are segregated in public places. I mean, this is what time of the history are we living in? So that transition is very shocking for people, but because we don't want to talk about other countries in the United States in the
Right.
academia, they don't talk about it. It's been individuals are interested in hearing the truth, like what happened to Iran, what was the cause, how did a country which is wealthy, has educated people, has a lot of young people,
Mhm.
suddenly become a dystopia. So I would love to continue sharing my story in the future, and hopefully
You
one
have a
day I will.
fabulous you have a fabulous story. Even though I have this podcast here at Common Sense America, I also represent a lot of book authors, and I love sharing their powerful stories. And you are a woman of influence. You are a powerful source. Or I mean, you
You're so
really are.
kind.
You really are. Okay, let's break down. I have in my notebook here, I have the United States of America in one column. I have Iran in the next column. Let's talk about the comparisons of the two and what you're seeing now from the social progressive agenda from the very far left and what they are doing. Let's compare those right now, and then let's also show the distinctions of how the United States of America is still a one nation under God. I pray that it will remain that. But let's talk about some of the red flags that you were seeing in this socialistic mindset, the watered down of history, the watered down of, this woke cult that they're infiltrating in our universities and our school systems. I was just talking about the Parents' Bill of Rights happening yesterday on Capitol Hill. Talk to me about the comparisons and also then the contrasts.
Yeah, just like the United States, Iran is a big country, has diverse number of people living in there. Not everyone is a Shia Muslim. There are a lot of Christians, there are a lot of Jewish people, and people speaking different languages. They live in Iran, and they all identify as Iranians. Not everyone is a Persian. We have Turks, Kurds,
Mhm.
Lurs, but everyone understand they're all Iranians, just like America. We are all Americans, no matter where we came from and how we look like and what language we speak. We all are united under the flag of the United States of America. And that is something that I see, which is common between both countries, this like strong sense of nationhood. And historically in Iran, there has been groups that have tried to erode that, and that is the Islamic Republic government. They have actively been trying to take away the identity as Iranian, our unity as individuals who have lived in this country for thousands of years, and try to replace it with religion that is not something we all share. Not everyone is a Shia Muslim,
Right.
and not everyone even speaks the same language, but this government has tried to take away and divide us on that ground.
Mhm.
And that's something I see also happening in the United States, that there uh, there are groups that try to tell people they should be ashamed of their identity as Americans, and they're the whole identity being an American is not a good thing to be,
Right.
and they try to take away the unity that American people have, and they try to divide people into groups and label them and tell them this is how you should behave and this is what your rights are. I it was very shocking to me to see that when I came to the United States. Like, this is the greatest country in the planet, very accepting. I mean, as an immigrant, I can come to the United States, become an American citizen, and pursue careers, contribute to
Yes.
the economy,
Yes.
and have same rights as someone who was born here. This is amazing, and
Yes.
and then there are groups who tell me that no, you're supposed to act like you're oppressed because you are a woman, you are a minority, and I just absolutely don't accept it. On the
Mhm.
other hand, Eden, when I went to undergrad, it was very interesting to me when I was speaking to my classmates and listening to their concerns. Well, the Gen Z is an anxious population. I mean, young people are generally concerned that where is the country heading? I mean, we are facing a lot of issues. We inherited a post 9/11
Yes.
foreign policy. We also inherited the COVID era, and that is very concerning. So,
Yes.
but at the same time, many young people were looking for, what's your solution? I want free college. I want free healthcare. These are the things that I feel very passionate for. I don't want guns. I want to take all the guns away. And I tell them this is exactly what happened in Iran
Mhm.
just a few years ago, that the government took all the guns. The government in the name of giving people free stuff, took away everyone's freedom,
Yes.
economic freedom, social freedom, and maybe free college isn't as free as you think it is. Maybe it is too expensive, and and that conversation was always shocking for many young people when I shared them my story, and many of them were receptive to it. It actually, I could see that things were clicking. So, I mean, I don't think the Gen Z is totally lost. I think a lot of it comes from the anxiety, and also academia doesn't help them. Professors, I've had professors who were very militant about
Mhm.
spreading the message of Karl Marx, and which again, my parents tell me the stories of that's exactly what happened in Iran, in colleges and universities right before the revolution. The
Mhm.
revolution of Iran did not get initiated by radical Muslims. It was
Right.
actually initiated by socialists
Mhm.
and activists who wanted to have a government similar to the Soviet Union.
Mhm.
And we ended up here. The fundamentals of the Islamic Republic is very similar to the ideas of the left. Well, they are the same people. It's just they wear turbans and robes, and they identify as clergy, but
Mhm.
they are the same. So that was something else I was really concerned about when I moved to the US, that um, people just buy into this idea. The politicians, people like AOC, people
Yes.
like
Yes.
Bernie Sanders, repeat the same rhetoric as the leaders of my past country have
Sure.
said,
Sure.
to trick American people into their agenda. And it was just not something I
Well, that's
appreciated.
that's the thing. When you talk about AOC and Bernie Sanders, I'm looking here at my notes. I'm sitting here thinking that's exactly what they ran on, on their campaigns, whether it was for president or whether it was for, House. And it's all about giving this and giving that and giving this with this entitlement now. And not necessarily just the Gen Zs, but there's this huge entitlement piece. Oh, what's the government going to give us now? But then, Ronald Reagan always said, if the government's giving you free stuff, there's going to be a repercussion for that. We are only one generation away from losing it all. And so let me ask you this, as we are talking about presidential, as we're talking about, you look at Trump, he still hasn't been arrested, says NPR. I think they were all hoping he would get arrested this week. I'm sitting there thinking, are you kidding me? So you look at DeSantis, you look at Trump, you look at Pence, you look at what we have currently in office. What do you see? And again, this is just from your standpoint of where you came from and what you're seeing now. Do you see red flags from any of those talking about being a candidate, or those who have been, or those currently in the administration now? I call it, I'm surprised YouTube hasn't taken me down yet, but I call it the Biden dictatorship. I mean, that's really what it looks like. So talk to me about that as we head into a very presidential season. We're already there. What are things that the American people and the Gen Zers need to be looking for and educating themselves on? Because it's like you said, when you finally bring the truth to light, you see the wheels turning. But that goes for every American in my backyard here in North Carolina, and every American in California. Talk to me a little bit about that.
So one of the greatest things about being in law school is we learn the Constitution very much in depth and learn about what are the duties and the powers of each branch of the government, and what are the limits of their power, and the whole checks and balances thing. And I think that's very important for presidential election. Candidates come and promise many things to American people. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, but they really do not have the constitutional power to do many of those things. And to me, that all sounds like campaign rhetoric.
Yes.
Presidents' most strongest power, which is actually enshrined in the Constitution, is their foreign policy and their impact on the world. I mean, President of the United States is the commander-in-chief.
Yes.
And I think that is something we should pay attention to more as American people, is that we're electing an official with absolute power over foreign policy. Are we electing someone who's going to do a great job with maintaining our global hegemony? Is he or she someone who will stand against our adversaries, or they're going to back down like Obama did and appease our enemies and let them to become bolder? So that's something I think we should pay attention to in the upcoming cycle. I see candidates like Nikki Haley who are strong in foreign policy. They have talked about it, and that's something I would like to see more from anyone who runs. We need to talk about president's most powerful authority, which is their foreign policy, their power over the military. What are they going to do? And at the same time, Congress is the legislative branch.
Sure.
They need to make sure that they pass the laws that serves their constituents and American people. And then we have the Supreme Court and the judicial system that needs to also check all of that. So at the same time, we got to remember, like, no one is above the law, and there are constitutional mechanisms that keep the balance, and that is very crucial to our democracy. I don't want to see any official, regardless of which party they come from, that are disrespectful to this constitutional balance. And so I think
it very much looks like that in many senses, the disrespect to the constitutional value. That's a really great soundbite and a great talking point right there, because I think that's what a lot of us everyday Americans, concerned citizens, veteran spouse right here, military community, what is happening to the Constitution. It's as though it no longer really exists in the mindset of a lot of our elected leaders. That's very scary. And
Yeah, and we have unelected leaders, the
yeah.
so-called independent agencies that they have done many things that has restricted Americans' rights and freedom, especially in the COVID time, and which we've seen, and that has gone unchecked. So that is
Mhm.
a concern. Like, what are we going to do with this like fourth branch of government, administrative states that is constantly looming over our heads
Yes.
without any restraints?
Right. Let's talk about women. Let's talk about the situation that happened about a week or so ago, the article that you guys had sent me. And it was talking to basically the morality police. And I want to talk to you about that as well. Iran says it's pardoned 20,000 in the wake of protests over oppression and the treatment of women. Break that down for me. What has been going on over there in the treatment of women? I was listening to NPR uh, uh, podcast about that from a couple of days ago. I don't usually listen to NPR, but it's nice to hear some of the other type of media and what kind of things that they are putting out there. And they really went into great detail on the morality police and what they are restricting women from doing, and the death of Masa as well. So talk to me a little bit about what happened and what's on the international stage now for this. And then let's talk about what that looks like here in the United States as well.
Since 1979, Iran has been a dystopia. After 40 years of tyrannical rule
Mhm.
of this government, the Iranian Gen Z is finally leading the fight against this government.
Mhm.
And they stand in front of bullets, and it's risky. It's not just, they go out there and they face nothing. I mean,
Right.
this is, we're talking about Iran. It's not the United States where we have protected speech.
Right.
Uh, in the past 5 months, millions of Iranians have been coming out protesting, and the demand is no longer reforms. The demand is regime change.
Mhm.
And because this government has totally destroyed Iran. And the human rights violations in these past years are well documented, and the arbitrary detentions, the killings, the extrajudicial executions of prisoners. And this concerned everyone from all walks of life, from across the world, because the Islamic Republic's actions don't only impact Iranians who live in Iran, but also Iranians who live abroad, Americans as well.
Mhm.
So in the past 5 months, Iran's situation has been very unstable.
Right.
A young woman was killed by the morality police. The
Mhm.
morality police harasses women for not properly wearing their scarf, and they took her into the van, and the new reports show that she was actually beaten to death and on her head,
Mhm.
uh, and she ended up in coma and she passed away. They denied it. They denied any responsibility. But as I said, the new reports that are documented came out, and they're published everywhere and across U.S. news as well, that she was actually beaten by the police. So uh, that was the last straw for
Right.
people,
Right.
and it sparked protests everywhere, not just in Iran, but also across the world. Here in Washington, D.C., I see protests every week. I participate, and it's just, there are like thousands of people out there. The scale is massive. And Iran has, Iranians are tired. They're tired of being stripped of their fundamental rights. Women have no rights. They can't choose what to wear. They can't choose when to travel or where to go. They can't choose careers. The government has control over every aspect of citizens' lives. And the Gen Z no longer stands for that.
Right.
We are the generation of the internet. We know what's going on in the world.
Yes.
We
Yes.
know that we are not buying into this anymore. And people say this to me, and it's really
Mhm.
horrifying. Like, I
Mhm.
hear from my high school friends, like, I'd rather die than live here. So I will go out and stand against this government. I mean,
Mhm.
this. it has gotten so bad that people can no longer like they no longer can put up with this. And
Right.
the concern is that the Biden administration will enter into nuclear talks with the Islamic regime again. And the Islamic government gets access to their funds and also to other financial assets abroad. They can use those funds to not only purchase more devices to use against Iranian people,
Right.
they can also continue developing the nuclear program. And you know what happens when regimes like the Islamic Republic have nuclear
Oh, yes.
weapons?
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
they will be
Yes.
absolutely unchallengeable.
Yes. Yes. No, most definitely. Do you still have family over there? You mentioned friends that are still over there. Do you still have family that are living over there?
I do, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but thankfully, my close family members are here.
Yes.
But I do have extended family back home, and
Mhm.
I am not in touch with them anymore because of the internet situation. The government has cut off the internet to people. The access has been really difficult, and that is something else. Like many people have lost their businesses over there. They were selling things on Instagram and Facebook and other social media, and now they can't because the government shut down the internet, and that's just horrifying.
So completely censored them altogether.
Yes, the censorship the Islamic Republic is trying er, to erase Iranian people from from the world. They don't want Iranians to be part of the international community.
Do you does any of what you are what you experienced and what you're seeing happening now, does that does that put any fear in you as to what could be ahead for the United States of America with just the way the Democrat regime is running state by state and running the federal government, from the censorship, from the COVID lockdowns, from the mandates, just the full on authoritarian government control? Does that send a fear and a red flag up to you that we as Americans need to be more involved in fighting for specific things? What are your thoughts on that from a Gen Zer's perspective, knowing that you're out picketing for these precious women out there who are wanting to stand up for their rights? What do we need to do as Americans outside looking in? What would you say to I'm 45 and my age group? I am a veteran spouse. My husband fought in Iraq for our freedom. What do we say to our communities? Where do we need to be awake and aware and use our common sense?
The biggest issue for a lot of people is that we get scared. Bad things happen in the world, and
Yeah.
people have genuine concerns, and politicians exploit that fear. Like I
Mhm.
remember early days of COVID. It was very scary forever. It was very scary for me. I lost family members in the first few months of COVID, to COVID, and we were all concerned. But at the same time, we have to be aware of that the fears of the world, yes, they require collective collaboration. We should all come together. However, that does not justify allowing the government to take away our fundamental rights and
Exactly.
our autonomy over our lives because of that fear.
Mhm.
And that was something I believe we saw very much during COVID with the mandates, and that even in schools, the
Yes.
whole like mask mandate thing. I always compare mask mandate to mandatory hijab because this rhetoric was the same. Oh, you have to wear a mask to protect others from contracting COVID, and same thing. The Iranian government says like you have to wear hijab to protect the society from sin, and no one knows like what does that mean.
Right.
And so I remember like all these like arbitrary rules for COVID masking and social distancing, and how that much inhibited social life for young people after there were vaccines, after things were the rates were really low, and there was really no scientific evidence that
Right.
any of this even worked.
Right.
And now we see all the evidence coming out that it didn't work, it doesn't work,
Nope.
and many individuals who spoke against it were censored, they were shut down, and this is exactly what authoritarian regimes do. Like, they shut down dissent, and that's why there's a reason that your speech is protected under the First Amendment. It's
Yes.
so important,
Yes.
even in the eyes of the founding fathers. It was very important. That's why they
Yes.
enshrined it in the First Amendment. And that's the one thing we saw being totally gone during COVID by government officials. It was freedom of speech. And I had the honor and the pleasure of working with attorneys last summer that challenged those mandates and fought for freedom of speech against the government officials who took it away. At New Civil Liberties Alliance, that's where I was, and they do amazing work fighting for Americans' rights and freedoms.
Mm.
So I mean, the fight just doesn't stop when you leave the authoritarian country and come to the United States. The founding fathers didn't stop fighting.
No, they
They
did.
came to the US and they kept fighting for freedom, and the fight continues because
Yes.
there will always be people who want to take our freedoms away, and we should just never let that happen.
No, I thank you for what you did with those lawyers and working on our behalf and the American people. Thank you for doing that. That's huge. Um, I want to find out from you, and we're just about up on the break. I would love to find out what other pieces, articles are you working on? Where can we get engaged with you? I'd love to welcome you back here to Common Sense. You are a breath of fresh air of the Gen Zers. I have a lot of Turning Point USA and Young Voices on here, and you guys are just the best. And so I want to keep engaging and I'd love, obviously, open invitation to have you back. Thank you for what you're doing. But what do you have coming down the pike? Where can we follow you? Are you going to be speaking anywhere this summer? What do you have going on?
Yeah, I write regularly for Southern California News Group, so I get published on Orange County Register and 8 other local newspapers in Southern California.
Okay.
So keep an eye on Orange County Register opinion columns, and also you can follow me on Twitter. And you can just look up my name on Twitter right here, and I promise I'm the only person with that name on social media. And if folks want to invite me to speak to their local groups or their high school, you can contact Dissident Project, and they will help coordinate that. And yeah, I'm working on a few other pieces about some of the regulations in California that want to take away freedom to choose what telecommunications network we choose. So yeah, I have some stuff going on there as well.
Every time I hear California, they're all about taking away people's freedoms. I swear Newsom doesn't even know what the word means. He does not like the word freedom at all. And that whole state just is so disturbing. But I know there's goodness there. I know great people there, and I know there's goodness. And we, like you said, we've got to keep fighting. We got to keep saving that state for sure. Well, I am so